Okay, Jeff, so I'm thinking I get a shower cap and I call myself the Green Hairnet.
Stop what you're doing. I'm the Purple Hornet, and this is my assistant, Cheeto.
Try them. They're tasty.
Your jokes are an assault to our entire audience.
I'll never stop my jokes. The audience loves my jokes. You'll never take me alive. Can I have one of those? I'm hungry too. So today we're going to talk about an older television series. We're going to talk about The Green Hornet from the 1960s with Van Williams and Bruce Lee, which is something we've been watching a little bit at home. And why don't you tell me what you think about it?
I think it's really good, and the number one thing I like in it is the green headlights. Like, it's really odd, but I really like it, even though you can't really see anything that helps you in the night, but I like it.
So you like the green headlights on their car. And the car is called the Black Beauty. It's a special car, and that is a cool feature. I agree with you. It's a cool feature. If I could have green headlights on my car, I totally would. What else do you like about it?
I like how Kato and the Green Hornet work together, unlike me and Cheeto.
You and Cheeto make a pretty good pair. You just bicker sometimes. But anyway, go ahead.
Sometimes. So, yeah.
Do you find the stories fun? Do you like them? Now they're not what you call a superhero. They're what we term as a crime fighter. And Batman's a crime fighter too. He doesn't have any superpowers. They're crime fighters. So they work in place of the police or in conjunction with the police. And The Green Hornet is a series that ran sort of in conjunction with Batman. It was Batman, and this is the Batman that you don't really care for. It's the 1960s Batman with the campy, comedic kind of style to it, and you're not a fan of that, is that right? Right. Well, that was a very successful show, however, and because of that, they decided to bring the Green Hornet out. Now, the Green Hornet had existed before. It was what was called a film serial. And when you went to the movies, way back before television, when you would go to the movies every week, they would have a different episode of the Green Hornet. So you'd see an episode of the Green Hornet, which would end, and it would end with a cliffhanger, and then you'd see your movie. Yep.
It's just like my teacher. She reads a book, and then she stops at, like, a mystery, and I'm like...
Yeah, but it makes you come back,
Sure.
right? It makes you come back and want to hear that, and that's what they were doing. So you would come back the next week to see another movie, and then you'd get to see the next episode of the Green Hornet, and that's how that would work. And actually...
Before you start, when you did see it, would you bring a cereal box to eat the cereal?
Ooh, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So, anyway, the Green Hornet was one of the film serials that actually inspired George Lucas with the Star Wars films. He liked film serials like the Green Hornet, and so when he did Star Wars, those are movie versions of a film serial in a much larger way, and they're episodic in the same way. So anyway, the Batman television series was successful, and they decided, well, let's do the Green Hornet. So they brought the Green Hornet out, and Van Williams was the lead. He plays the Green Hornet, and Bruce Lee plays his sidekick, Kato. And this was pretty much the first time American audiences were exposed, mainstream audiences were exposed to Bruce Lee. So this would be the first thing. And they were a great pairing, and Kato doesn't have a lot of lines, but he makes the most of his screen time, and he's very enigmatic and certainly very eye-catching what he does with his martial arts abilities. And Van Williams was considered the star. He was very handsome, very rugged-looking, and had a good following. However, this show only lasted one season. It was never able to capture the audience that Batman somehow did. And I think it's because the stories were actually more serious, which is actually something I liked about it. The stories, they were actually more realistic crime-fighting situations that they got into. So I like that. Do you like the stories in this versus the Batman? Why don't you like the Batman television series?
I don't like how it's like that weird, fuzzy kind of look to it. And I guess I don't really follow it that well either. So.
Right. And I mean, they made it look very much like a comic book, like they would put the pow and the bam kind of graphics over the top of the fight scenes. But again, that camp aspect to it is what kind of captured the audience. And this one didn't use that. However, for my money, I love this series. I actually enjoy it quite a bit. I like the stories in it. Van Williams tends to get a bad rap in it because most people feel that Bruce Lee was the star more than he was. However, I think he's great in the role. And I want to ask you something. When you see him, when he's not wearing the mask, when he's his alter ego, he looks one way with the dark hair and everything. And all he wears is that eye mask. To
And
me,
the hat.
yeah, but he doesn't look like the same person.
Exactly.
I wouldn't know that that's who that was. And I don't know if it's because it brings out his eyes more vividly or something. It almost looks like his hair is blonde. He looks completely different. So I actually think this is one of those rare occurrences where the crime fighter or the superhero wears a very simplistic mask and his identity looks completely different, to me anyway. I don't know for you. But.
I wonder in like real life, they take the one person.
No, I think it's the same guy. I know. I thought that a couple times. Like, is that the same guy? But it is. It's the same guy. One piece of it that I don't care for, I'm going to ask you about. What do you think about the music for this?
I like it.
Oh, you like the music. Okay. Would you like all the music or just the Green Hornet theme at the beginning?
I like the Green Hornet theme at the beginning.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you, what do you think about the music during the show, the underscoring music? Now be honest, because if you like it, you like it, and that's good. Or if you don't like it, it's okay.
I think it's a little bit not that exciting, I guess.
Okay.
That makes you want to see it, but I do like the show.
You like the show.
I guess I like one of the parts, which is where he turns the lights green and then the cars switch.
Yes, when they're turning into Kato and the Green Hornet and they go down into the garage and on the tool board he turns the ratchet and the car that's there it grabs it and it turns the cars and the Black Beauty comes up. You like that part? That's a great part. It's very similar in the Batman television series to when they come out of the Bat Cave with the Bat car and the roadblock sign drops down and they drive over it. It's the same. I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's the same segment every time. They don't refilm it, but I don't care. I like it, even though. So right, I agree. Getting back to the music for 1 minute, that's the piece I was going to say I didn't care for. Now, actually, the composer is Billy Mays, and he actually does the music for a show that I love a lot, which is Emergency, which is the story about the Los Angeles paramedics program. That's the first show I actually remember as a kid, being a kid, and having to watch religiously every week. And his music is it's really heavy on the horns, and it's got a jazz sound to it. And for Emergency, the story about the firemen and the paramedics, it works okay because they're not talking a lot in it, and they're doing something, and it works as underscoring. I find the music to be very distracting in this. It's very loud. The horns are very blaring. I feel like it distracts me from what I want to be watching. So I actually find it to be not the right kind of counterpoint to what's going on for me. That's just different for me than for you. A couple interesting notes. When they go to in the newspaper building, where part of it's set, because that's the Green Hornet's other ego, his alter ego, there's also a television station in there. And the guy who's the announcer on the television station, you'll recognize his voice from a lot of other things. I think he was the voice of like the Blue Falcon on the Saturday morning cartoons. He has that voice. So a lot of the Saturday morning cartoons from the 70s and 80s that I remember is that guy in his voice. Anything else you want to say about this?
One.
Sure.
The TV studio does not look anything like this.
Yeah, it was very different back then. But, they still had the glass booth that he would be contained in, the soundproof booth, and he would be on that. So it's a little bit different. So, anything else?
I don't think so.
No? All right. Well, yummy or crummy for you?
I'm going to give it an edible, just because of the music and,
It's not really your cup of tea necessarily, but you're okay with it. I'm going to give it a yummy and recommend it. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to say this one last thing about it. Your grandmother, my mother, and your grandfather, my father, used to tell me when I was a kid your age, they used to talk all about how they had Green Hornet comic books, and Green Hornet was so cool. And if I was watching Batman or Superman on TV, they would be like, he's nothing compared to the Green Hornet. The Green Hornet had the coolest car, and it was called the Black Beauty, and they would talk about it, and they had comic books, I guess, had they only kept them. We'd own our own TV studio if they'd kept them. but they used to talk about it. This is Grandma talking about a crime fighter, a superhero, and loving it. And I thought, I've got to see it. And you could never see it. It was never on TV. It doesn't exist on DVD. It was very hard to find. And about 3 years ago, it was run on one of those throwback channels. MeTV ran it for a season. And I watched it, and I was enthralled. And I don't know if they were talking about having watched it in the film serials that we were talking about earlier, or if it was just from the comic books. I do remember them remarking on this and talking about Van Williams and Bruce Lee, so I know they saw this. But they made him a larger-than-life character for me before I ever saw him. So when I finally did see it, it actually lived up to the promise that they gave it, and I enjoyed it a lot. So I'm going to recommend it and tell you to give it a try. I think it's an underrated television show that should have lasted more than a season. Okay, so that's it. So, don't get stung. I have got nothing. You got something? You're the jokester these days.
No.
No? All right. Maybe I should wear the Green Hornet. Hairnet? Yeah. You're going to have to cut all that. That doesn't work. Curse you, Purple Hornet. Have we got enough, Mr. Jeff?